Good evening, good evening, good evening. I appreciate your patience. Thank you for coming out tonight. I just want to welcome everyone and introduce myself. My name is Makeda Crane. I'm a first-year law student here at UDC, David A. Clark School of Law. And I just want to say welcome. Welcome everybody to the first National Association Against Police Brutality Forum. And because of the commitment of my classmate, Jonathan Newton, who is right here in the audience, who I'm going to be introducing, who is the founder and president of the National Association Against Police Brutality. He's also a first-year law student and my classmate. So I'm going to just give you a little bit of background about Mr. Newton. Newton is a native of Key West, Florida, where he was the first and only African-American in the history of that city to earn the Boy Scouts of America's highly coveted Eagle Scout Award. He earned his undergraduate degree with honors in social sciences from Thomas Edison State College in Trenton, New Jersey, where he wrote his first academic scholarly work for his capstone project entitled Racial Disparity in the Criminal Justice System, a close look at the numbers. In 2013, Thomas Edison also presented him with the prestigious Arnold Fletcher Award for exceptional achievement in independent learning by testing out of 117 semester hours of college-level work in 16 months. Before getting into law enforcement, he was a publisher of 2 African-American community newspapers, and he is a former police officer and still certified as a peace officer by the Georgia Peace Officers Standards and Training Council. He is also the recipient of the 2013 Freedom Fund Civil and Human Rights Award by the Clayton County NAACP for being a whistleblower against the sitting sheriff of that county. He is married to the lovely Janet Lee Newton. I don't know if she's in the house yet. And they have 2 children, Taylor and Jonathan Jr. Before we begin the program, I want to share with you, because I think this is an important context, part of the reason that we are here today in this moot courtroom. As many of you know, on August 9th, 2014, in Ferguson, Missouri, Michael Brown, an 18-year-old African-American young man, had been shot and killed by a white Ferguson police officer. 2 days later, on August 11th, 2014, Jonathan Newton, myself, and my fellow classmates walked into the room right on this floor, 516, for orientation as entering first-year law students. The shooting of Michael Brown and the subsequent protests in Ferguson, Missouri became the huge pink elephant in the room for my black, brown, and white classmates. We ended up having a conversation encouraged by Professor Khan, who led our orientation course in law and justice, and one of the founders of this law school, about what the shooting of Michael Brown meant to us. Things got heated as we represented a cross-section of race, ethnicity, and socioeconomic status with diverse viewpoints and sets of experiences. So the question for many of us was, where do we go from here? And how do we effectively respond? In thinking about the significance of today's event and its purpose, Frantz Fanon, World War II veteran, philosopher, and critical race theorist and psychiatrist from the island of Martinique, entered my mind. Fanon made an observation about how one understands violence in the 20th century, and he stated that Hitler was not an anomaly in the modern West, and that instead was a part of a legacy and culture of institutionalized oppression that legitimized and allowed for the dissemination of indigenous populations in the Western Hemisphere, resulted in the transatlantic slave trade, which was responsible for the capture and government-sanctioned bondage of millions of Africans, which also gave birth to a Hitlerism, resulting in the Holocaust and colonial oppression in the 20th and now 21st century, and is a continuation of a consistent relationship to violence connected to the ongoing dehumanization of certain groups of people. Today's event is entitled Confronting Institutionalized Racism, Real Steps to End Police Brutality and Fix Our Justice System. Can you guys hear me? In confronting institutionalized racism, we are confronting and standing against the ongoing dehumanization of particularly Black and brown people of color. But in doing so, we are also standing for a justice system that must recognize the humanity of all people. My classmate, Jonathan Newton, decided that he would not sit in silence and watch the ongoing and systematic violence and dehumanization of his community and of his fellow human beings. Fanon also coined a phrase in which he stated, each generation must discover its mission, fulfill it or betray it in relative opacity. I am proud to say that my colleague, Jonathan Newton, has chosen to fulfill his mission. I introduce you to Jonathan Newton, President and founder of the National Association Against Police Brutality. And again, welcome all of you who believe in freedom and cannot rest. Welcome.
Wow. Thank you, Ms. Crane, for that incredible introduction. Welcome, everyone. During our first semester, Ms. Crane, several of my classmates and me would talk about our conditions as Americans and as Black Americans. Most of the time, I found myself the only guy in the room. These classmates and ladies, including Ms. Crane, inspired me. They encouraged me, and at times they challenged me to open my narrowly conformed mind to their struggles with the things that they felt and that they experienced throughout their journey through life. The perspective of my classmates is an invaluable learning tool. Thanks to Mrs. Crane and my classmate Rhea Washington, I am now fully aware of what patriarchy is. My wife and daughter have become the benefactors of this lesson. My daughter is attending UDC Community College, and her new education about patriarchy has caused difficulty in me getting a glass of water. Of course, I can get the glass of water my damn self. And I have Mrs. Crane and Rhea to thank for that. But seriously, we all shared our stories, and Ms. Crane stood out to me because she made it her business early on in life to be an agent of change. She's fought as an organizer to decriminalize marijuana here in the district. She's been an ardent advocate of the exploited people of the lands of the African Congo. She, along with my friends, my family, and my classmates, inspired and encouraged and made me hopeful that we can be the change that we desire. I'm thankful that you all took the time out of your lives to come out here tonight to discuss this important issue. I want to recognize those fighters for justice in the audience who came out tonight. Anybody from Code Pink that came out because Code Pink told you to come out, we thank you for coming. Anyone from Cindy Sheehan's organization, thank you for coming. Marsha Adebayo's DC Hands Up Coalition, thank you. I want to take a moment to thank some of the folks who helped make tonight possible. First, Dean Shelley Broderick and Associate Dean Anna Marie Stewart for allowing us to use the room, and their constant encouragement for us as law students to make a difference in the world. Pamela Dunstan for helping with the food arrangements. Joe Libertelli, my co-conspirator and activist, for helping us with marketing and taking his time to advise me on the many things that I need to learn in this new role. My supervising attorney for my community service project, Mrs. Carrie Nash. David Lockhart provided the printing for free. Jamal Muhammad put us on his radio show. Mr. David Whetstone we were on the show today, down at 89.3. The Open Society Foundation, the Washington Peace Center. My classmates who are volunteering at the doors with the food, and they will also be cleaning up tonight. And to the panelists and speakers who are participating tonight, I want to thank you all. And last but certainly not least, Professor Edgar Kahn. This school was established as a social justice law school by Professor Kahn and his wife, his late wife, missioned to diversify the practice of law and to make a difference in the world through social justice. Professor Kahn welcomed us on that first day of law school. And when I went home and did my research into him, I was blown away at the work that he has done to promote social justice and to confront structural and institutionalized racism. I am deeply honored to have been a student of his for law and justice, and his work and spirit were part of the drive and motivation that helped create the NAAPB as my community service project for law and justice. So, we're going to introduce you to the NAAPB. Let me pull up a brief slideshow, please. The National Association Against Police Brutality. The National Association Against Police Brutality, its purpose is to eliminate police brutality and reform the criminal justice system through citizen education, community empowerment, and to hold our law enforcement and judicial officials accountable for their decisions. Our plan is to educate citizens on policies and laws that foster police brutality and racial disparity in the criminal justice system. We seek to empower citizens to take action by collaborating and coordinating efforts with existing organizations and individuals in the police accountability space. We want to promote accountability by organizing to hold law enforcement and judicial officials accountable for brutality and racially desperate acts in the administration of the law. That's our plan in a nutshell. How we go about doing that, I need to talk a little bit about how police brutality works right now. In America, if you're assaulted by the police, you have to call the police. You have to report your crime that the police have perpetrated on you to the police. And that causes people to be apprehensive about reporting the crime. And so what we're endeavoring to do is to create a data set that will begin to track police encounters, incidents that take place. We're going to be tracking intimidation and harassment, domestic violence by officers, sexual assault by officers. Domestic violence by officers and sexual assault go largely unreported by most of the victims. But they are they're the second largest type of police brutality that takes place. These numbers are from the Cato Institute for their police misconduct project that they have. We're going to track excessive force and beatings, non-fatal in custody and jail deaths. We just had one of those in Fairfax County. And we're also going to track non-fatal and fatal shootings. How we're going to do that is with P.I.R.P. And I'm just using the same methods that I learned as a police officer. Police officers call people P.I.R.Ps, so I came up with a system. We're going to call it P.I.R.P. What P.I.R.P stands for is just a police incident reporting platform. And so we're going to do a brief demonstration of what it is. It's not complete yet. We're in need of help and money. We're getting there. So go back to click the logo to take you to the home page. So basically, if you have an incident involving the police, you're going to come onto the police National Association Against Police Brutality website, and you're going to go down to report an incident. Then you're going to sign in down at the bottom. And you can create your account. Your account's on another screen, but we've already created the accounts tonight, so we're going to just do a brief demonstration of how this works. After you sign in, you're going to go to a screen where you file a new incident report. This is exactly what cops do. When they go back to the precinct, they file an incident report, and they sit down and they write it code 5, or they might call it something else in police work. But citizens need to report incidents that happen with the police. I find it amazing in our country that we track certain things, but not police encounters that have gone awry. So you put your name in, first name, last name. We have male, female, and gender nonconforming. All right. You select your ethnicity. There's a typo in there. We're going to fix that later. So, was the victim under 18? Was the victim armed or not? Then you put in the incident address. This is exactly what police officers do. Then you put in your city. You select your state, and it'll populate with the counties of your available state, and then you put in your zip code. You drill down because we need more detail. And we're hoping that people actually start paying attention. Part of our policies are that you need to know who the officers are in your community. So just as quickly as we can see on the side of their police car, police, or on their uniforms that they wear, police, we need to see markers that say last names. So you put the incident date in, contact information, your contact information. And here's what's important about our system. P.I.R.P is not just set up to track the data. P.I.R.P is actually set up to get the victim help. And that's important because a lot of victims of police brutality actually don't have anybody to help them. They just kind of have a situation. These are very traumatic situations. And then the victim just sits out there. They languish. They might find a predatory person to come and take advantage of them. But what we're going to do is partner with the NLG and the National Police Accountability Project and other attorneys who are inside the police accountability space throughout the country. And we're going to populate the database with those people. So what happens is the victim selects these choices. Would you like legal assistance? Would you like spiritual counseling? Would you like psychological counseling? And would you like the NAAPD to contact you? Through our chapters throughout the country, we have one in Arizona State University right now, one at USC Berkeley. We're going to be establishing chapters throughout the country. People will pay memberships, and then they can become what's called a certified facilitator for the P.I.R.P system. And how that works is once they become a facilitator for their particular county, they will be able to log in. They will get a notification. She's going to go ahead and finish this off by putting in the agency name. Let's just put in one for MPD, Officer Newton. And we're going to know his badge number. If you don't know it, it's not required. But we're also going to know if we can put his vehicle number in there, if you put his vehicle number in there. Then you put his race and his gender. This is important because if you have an encounter with the police and you go to file the report, the first thing the PIO or the Internal Affairs Officer is going to ask you is, what's his name? Do you have a badge number? What was his car number? And if you don't have those, they're going to kind of tell you, go get that and then come back and see me. So we're going to be educating people on how to report on the police, not just with video cameras, but we're going to use the same technologies, the same techniques that the police use. We're going to actually do trainings for citizens to know how to report incidents when they happen. So they will add incidents, witnesses, and then down at the bottom, they will be able to load up audio or video files. And then they'll hit the big green button that says submit. Of course, they'll do all this after signing a disclaimer. It's loaded in the system, and you see right there at the bottom, it says pending review by a facilitator. If you scroll down real quick. There you go. It's the first one that she just put in the system right there. So it was filed, and then you close that out. What will happen as soon as she puts that in the system is that facilitator for that particular county will get a text message. The text message will say, you have an incident that's in your jurisdiction. That facilitator will then log onto the system, begin to call that person and verify, make sure we don't have somebody playing with the system, just loading innocuous stuff in there. And then after they verify the information, then we go to our back end side and we actually dispatch that to the attorneys, to the spiritual help, and to the mental wellness help, and we begin to help that victim deal with that particular situation. This is the back end of the P.I.R.P system. It's not entirely complete, but when this is done, the dots will pop up for that particular month on the calendar, on the map. You can tell how many facilitators we have in the system, how many clients. We call them clients, but they're not actually clients. And you can also tell how many service providers we have in the system. And we'll hit go. But that's our P.I.R.P system. So this is why I got bad grades the first semester. No, this is what I worked on the first semester. And coming towards the end of this semester, after tonight, I'm burying myself in a hole for finals, and we'll be rolling this out August the 1st. But we have great interest from a lot of attorneys around the country who are interested in participating. We are going to be working with Reverend George Gilbert here in Washington, D.C. He's involved with the National Baptist Progressive Baptist Association, and we're going to use the church as an infrastructure to be able to get the word out and also be a spiritual provider. We're going to open this up to other people. The money that will be raised through attorneys who want to pay a listing fee for this will be used to market the website itself, and we will just put flyers up in churches, barbershops, and beauty salons, and it'll say, bad cops have the unions. Who do you have? So I'm using the same technology and the same techniques that I used when I was doing a newspaper. I found that if I wanted to sell my newspapers, I just had to drop them off at the churches, and I needed to drop them off at the barbershops and the beauty salons, and the phone would ring because that's where people hang out in some of the communities that I was a part of. So this is what the back end of the system looks like. So that's what our P.I.R.P system does. So you can go ahead and log out of that. So if you're asking why we need such a tool as the P.I.R.P, let me be clear. I think it's absolutely crazy in this country that we track how many times lightning strikes the earth. Yet our government does not track how many times a police officer kills or beats or sexually assaults a citizen. The P.I.R.P system is meant to do that by giving us a way to report the incident without reporting it to the government first and getting the help that you need. And with that data, we will confront that system to change that system. Let me describe that system to you in a little more detail. Since 1607, when the first English settlers arrived down the road in Jamestown, Virginia, for blacks, the system of racial oppression was already here. The free work and toil of my ancestral people was as fundamental to this country's prosperity and its origin as oxygen is to human life. That system of racial oppression was created and maintained for the purpose to prosper those who created it. 258 years would pass before a war was fought by what many would today characterize as a war between the states. As some of the Southern historians spin it, the Civil War wasn't about slavery, it was about states' rights. I would counter more specifically, it was about a state's right to maintain slavery. But the war that was fought and lost by the South, the 13th Amendment was passed, and according to some of those historians, all slaves were free. But I believe that the system was still there. The 13th Amendment says, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. When I read the amendment with my newly acquired UDC School of Law lawyer-like critical mind, I draw the conclusion that the 13th Amendment to the Constitution didn't actually abolish slavery. It simply replaced it with what the law considered illegal slavery with what the words of the amendment now consider to be a new version of legally justified slavery. No longer was slavery dependent on skin color alone. Under the new amendment, slavery can result as a punishment for a crime upon conviction. So if you were a practicing racist at that time, or even today, all you have to do is make it easier for a black person to get a criminal conviction. And without going into all the details, just know that since the amendment was passed, there are a huge number of laws created to get black people that all-powerful and damning critical conviction. And this transition of the qualification for slavery was what we now consider to be the first transformation of this system of racial oppression, from illegal slavery to justifiably legal slavery. The original system was never abolished. It simply transformed. After the Civil Rights era, that system transformed again into the Jim Crow era of racial segregation and oppression. So for another 100 years, that system was still there. When that system became too globally known and exposed in the mid-50s and early 60s, the system transformed yet again. The Civil Rights era produced laws that were lauded to protect civil rights and promote equality in America. But while telling citizens that equality and civil rights protected blacks from discrimination, that system morphed and transformed into what we see today, a system of mass criminalization and mass incarceration. That's our system, and that system is still here. It's maintained by a criminal justice system that gives police officers the unchecked authority to patrol and punish those who live in the hoods, drastically different than those who live in the woods. A system that allows prosecutors the unreviewable discretion to offer alternatives to prosecution to white suspects in white-collar crime, while selectively and aggressively prosecuting black and brown citizens for what they alone consider crime, while ignoring or sabotaging cases of black folks seeking justice for their dead loved ones. It's a system that allows judges to issue higher bonds for bail, issue higher fines, and give longer sentences to black and brown people than it does to white people. And no one is tracking the data. That's our system. That system is still there. So from 1607 to 1776 to 1865 to 1963 and now in 2015, my people and me have been confronted and oppressed by that system. That has been maintained and transformed from one characterized by open and barbaric public displays of institutionalized racism to one now subtle and sophisticated, behind closed doors, institutionalized racism. In America, we no longer trade our slaves on the slave block, at auctions, to the highest bidder, or at the boat, down at the dock, or the ports. We now sell them to private prisons, private probation companies, and we do it all in the courts. So tonight, my generation, both black and white, gay and straight, male, female, transgender, join a long lineage of fighters for justice and equality, and we take this opportunity to confront that system, to confront institutionalized racism by offering solutions to end police brutality and fix this sick, broken, and hypocritical criminal justice system. Welcome.